You're pushy and obnoxious, and you always want to be the center of attention. Barbara Jean looked around, then pointed at herself. Hello, I've always been that way. Brock, ever the opportunist, chimed in. She kinda got a point there. Yeah, well, something's changed. Barbara Jean, Reba pressed, feeling a strange need to defend her own irrational fears. Barbara Jean's voice softened, a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. Yeah, the way you guys look at me. I'm still the same, Barbara Jean, I always was. I'm just less winded. Reba paused, the anger draining out of her, replaced by a cold wave of realization. Barbara Jean was right. It wasn't just Barbara Jean who had changed. It was them. Their perception of her, their reactions to her. Brock, sensing the shift, looked at Reba. No, she might be right. It could be us. I'm sorry, honey. Reba just got me all worked up. That's... Reba cut him off. Look, Barbara Jean, the truth is, I think I went down to the gym almost hoping that I'd find you doing something wrong. You know, anything. So I could feel superior to you in your skinny butt. So I'm sorry. The words felt heavy on her tongue, but they were true. She had been jealous, insecure, and her own feelings of inadequacy had projected onto Barbara Jean's transformation. Barbara Jean stared at her, then a slow smile spread across her face. Sorry. Yeah, this is great. For the first time since we've known each other, you want to be me. Reba blinked. I don't want to be you. Barbara Jean laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. I know. It's even better. You want to look like me. She gave Reba a triumphant, playful smirk. Reba shook her head, a reluctant smile forming on her own face. Barbara Jean, for all her quirks, was still Barbara Jean, just less winded. And perhaps a little more perceptive than Reba had given her credit for. Hey, where are you going? Brock asked Barbara Jean, who was already heading for the door. Just gonna go grab something to eat, Barbara Jean replied with a wink. I'll see you next year. Reba watched her go, a strange mix of emotions swirling within her. Envy, yes, but also a newfound respect. Barbara Jean had achieved something remarkable, not just physically, but in her confidence in self. And Reba, for the first time, had truly acknowledged her own insecurities. It was a start. Chapter 5. Cheyenne's Reflection. While the drama of Barbara Jean's transformation played out in the living room, Cheyenne had retreated to her bedroom, a sanctuary she shared with Van. The echoes of Van's tactless comments still stung, making her feel small and inadequate. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, scrutinizing every curve, every perceived flaw. She was a mother, a wife, a woman who had always taken pride in her appearance. But now, next to Barbara Jean's new pretty, she felt old pretty, fading pretty. Van, sheepish, and clearly regretting his earlier remarks, found her there. Hey buddy, what are we watching? He asked, trying to lighten the mood, gesturing to her intense stare at the mirror. Cheyenne didn't respond, her gaze fixed on her own image. Van sighed, knowing he'd messed up. No, we're not. Want to rock, paper, scissors for it? He offered, a desperate attempt to bridge the gap. Fine, let's go, Cheyenne said, her voice flat. Van held up his hand. You're gonna pick scissors, aren't you? Cheyenne finally turned, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. Get out. Van, heartbroken, backed away, giving her the space she clearly needed. He loved Cheyenne fiercely, but his brain often ran ahead of his filter, especially when confronted with something new and shiny. He'd seen Barbara Jean's transformation, and in his simplistic way, had merely stated an observation, completely unaware of the emotional minefield he was stepping into. Later that evening, after the dust had settled from the Barbara Jean revelation, Van found Cheyenne still in their room, now sitting on the bed, flipping through a fashion magazine with a detached air. He approached cautiously, sitting beside her. Hey, honey, he said softly. Hey baby, I need to talk to you. Cheyenne didn't look up. Oh honey, I just got the TV. She was referring to the distant sounds of the living room, a way to avoid the conversation. Van gently took the magazine from her hands. Well, I started thinking that maybe you don't think of me as new pretty, because I don't do enough to keep your interest. Her voice was small, vulnerable. Van's heart ached. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her. No, honey, you're way hot. Guilty, he admitted, referring to his earlier comments. But anyway, I thought that maybe I should, change my look every now and then, just to keep things fresh. So, I bought a wig. She gestured to a package on the dresser. Van gently took her hand, his gaze earnest. Cheyenne, put that down. Listen to me. He paused, gathering his thoughts. This wasn't just about Barbara Jean or wigs. It was about them. I think it's a good thing that when I look at you, I don't see the beautiful girl with the killer bob. Cheyenne's eyes widened, a flicker of hurt in them. I see my wife, Van continued, his voice full of unwavering conviction. And I'm attracted to her whether she's all dressed up, ready to go out, or just sitting on the couch wearing those washed-up flannel pajamas. Cheyenne searched his eyes, looking for any hint of insincerity. Yeah, Van affirmed, squeezing her hand. You're beautiful to me because of who you are. A soft, watery smile touched Cheyenne's lips. Oh, she leaned into his embrace, feeling the warmth of his love finally chasing away the shadows of insecurity. I feel kinda stupid. Van chuckled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. That's also who you are, and I love it. Come on, you. He pulled her up, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Where are we going? Cheyenne asked, a lightness returning to her voice. Oh, we are going upstairs, Van whispered, his intention clear. You, Cheyenne giggled, feeling a spark of her old self return. As they reached the door, she paused, picking up the wig. Hold on, I thought you didn't want me to wear that. Van turned, a loving smile on his face. Sometimes I want to feel new pretty, Cheyenne said, a newfound confidence in her voice. Van just smiled, reaching for her hand. And sometimes, I just want my beautiful wife, no matter how she feels. They walked upstairs, leaving the echoes of the day's drama behind, stepping into the quiet intimacy of their own love, a love that, unlike fleeting trends or superficial transformations, was rooted in something far deeper and more enduring. The house, for the first time in a long while, felt truly settled, the scent of pizza long gone, replaced by the quiet hum of family, flawed and complicated, but ultimately, united. Chapter 6. Reba's Unspoken Longings. The revelation about Jordan being gay had diffused the immediate crisis, but the ripples of Barbara Jean's transformation continued to spread through the Hart household. Reba, in particular, found herself in an unfamiliar state of introspection. Barbara Jean's confident assertion, "You want to look like me?" had struck a chord deeper than Reba cared to admit. She stood in front of her own mirror, a critical eye sweeping over her reflection. She wasn't overweight, not by any means, but the years of raising 3 children, navigating a divorce, and now hosting a full house, had taken their toll. The sharpness of her cheekbones was softened, her waistline less defined than it once was. She saw the lines around her eyes, etched by laughter and worry, and the faint silver threads in her fiery red hair that she stubbornly refused to acknowledge. Reba had always been a woman of substance, her worth defined by her strength, her wit, her ability to keep her family afloat. She hadn't chased superficial beauty, not after Brock had left her for a woman who was, at the time, softer, more traditionally feminine. She'd built a new identity as a survivor, a pragmatist. But seeing Barbara Jean, her former rival, bloom into this new, pretty version of herself, it stirred something Reba thought she had long buried, a quiet longing for that undeniable, head-turning allure. She thought of Brock, his earlier desperation, his fear of losing Barbara Jean now that she had options. It was a primal fear, one Reba had once faced, when Brock's eyes had strayed. The irony wasn't lost on her. Brock, the man who had left her for a different kind of woman, was now grappling with the very insecurity he had inflicted upon Reba years ago. Reba sighed, running a hand over her stomach. A power walk, she'd declared. A power smoothie. It had started as a way to cope with Barbara Jean's endless eating, a desperate attempt to bring some order to the chaos. Now, it felt like something more, a quiet challenge to herself. Not to be new like Barbara Jean, but to reclaim a part of herself that had been lost in the shuffle of life. That evening, as the house settled into its usual rhythm, Reba found herself on the porch swing, sipping a glass of iced tea. She heard the distant sounds of the TV from the living room, a soft murmur of voices. Brock and Barbara Jean, Van and Cheyenne were likely upstairs, in their own world. Jake was probably glued to a video game. A pang of loneliness, sharp and unexpected, pierced her. She was the anchor of this family, but sometimes the anchor felt very much alone. Her dating life post-Brock had been sparse.